absolutely loved both the Wicked movies. For context, I am a huge Wizard of Oz fan, and I actually wrote a poem back in 2018 for the International Wizard of Oz writing competition. It was called The Tin Man because that's the character that I relate to the most. And yeah, if anyone is interested in reading, it's linked in the description alongside the unpopular Substack, which I recently launched. Speaking of the Tin Man, I think Ethan Slater was amazing as a Tin Man. Seeing how good his acting is made me realize that we didn't get to see enough of him in the movie. And I guess that's my only complaint about the movie. I saw that a lot of people were complaining about how the movie triggered them, especially Glinda, but I think that was the point. You need to see people for who they are, and this movie does a great job of holding a mirror to what society deems wicked. I especially love that we got several shades of wicked, and they were surprisingly not green. First of all, we have Glinda. And this is the most frustrating fictional woman since Serena van der Woodsen. In the very first clip of Glinda, when she arrives in a boat, they are trying so hard to remind us of Elle Woods, but nobody's buying it. Glinda is no Elle Woods. She is Bruiser at best. Mind you, I love Ariana. She played this character really well, but I have no misconceptions about the goodness of Glinda. Every single layer of her unpleasant personality was on display. Her softness, because yeah, evil people can be soft, her manipulative tendencies, and the way that she runs on absolute mediocrity and is celebrated for it. All there for us to see, and it was satisfying to watch. If you think that Glinda is glorified, you are quite literally at the same intellectual level as the people dancing around in the background, burning a witch they did not know, deciding she must be bad if she's green. Glinda isn't the villain of the movie, but that's because being the villain would mean that your role is significant. And that's the point. We get to see how insignificant she was compared to Elphaba. And we realize that it doesn't matter that she can't do much. That is precisely why she's celebrated. Another thing that really stood out to me is how her mediocrity is visible to people like Madame Morrible from the get-go. She does not even want to give her the time of day. And it's because Madame Morrible can see the amount of effort that goes into maintaining this level of mediocrity. Glinda is not incapable of doing something great with her life. She chooses not to. She says so herself. I wish I was magical. Why? Because magic would mean she wouldn't have to do the work. We all know people like this. They put so much time and effort into this performance of doing something, and it genuinely makes you think it would have taken less time to just do the work. Like, did that not occur to you? And the truth is, it did. Even half of the effort Glinda put into pretending to be good, if she had put that into a skill or a cause, it would have made her great. People like Glinda want to be celebrated, but they don't want to work for it. And they are celebrated so often that they come to expect it. She knew that if she had left with Elphaba, she would have to work for it. She would have to work to overthrow the regime. But staying back and riding on the coattails of the wizard guarantees that she would not have to work for greatness. And that is the better choice in her mind, even if it means opposing Elphaba. In Oz, the source of magic is emotions. And powerful magic comes from powerful emotions, usually negative ones. So it's not that Glinda has to present goodness because she has no magic. She has no magic because magic requires emotion and depth that can only come from struggle and effort, something she has successfully avoided at every step. For all we know, she was magical this whole time, but never found out because she never exerts herself. Have you ever heard the quote, "Do you understand the violence it took to become this gentle?" That's very fitting for Glinda. There's a lot of violence and unfairness that she's absolutely willing to ignore, so long as she gets to be celebrated for existing in her default setting. In one breath, she goes from that old goat to "I'm changing my name in solidarity." You can't go from indifference in the face of animal abuse to solidarity with them within a moment. That means morals are like outfits that you switch depending on the occasion and what is convenient for you. If this movie left you with a bad taste, that was the point. You were supposed to think, wow, I really don't like this person, so that you could identify people like Glinda in your life and get away from them. I get that Elphaba loves Glinda, but there is a reason for that. It wasn't because Glinda was a good friend. It is the fact that only someone who has been hated and ridiculed as much as Elphaba would find this minute occasional performance of kindness that Glinda offers enough. If you were raised in a kind, loving home, you would find Glinda's bare minimum friendship and opportunistic ways disgusting. Yes, she danced with her at the ball, but only after Elphaba actually did something good for her. And she knew that embarrassing her would put her position with Madame Morrible in jeopardy. Without Elphaba's support, Madame Morrible wouldn't have tolerated Glinda for a second. So I'd go so far as to say that the dance was damage control. You might think that she did ask the wizard to leave and imprison Madame Morrible. Isn't that a good thing? She didn't get rid of them because it was the right thing to do. She did it to secure her own position. That was not kindness. It was in her best interest to make nice with the animals that had been radicalized by Elphaba. Not hating animals is not the same as being their champion or protector. It means that you wouldn't hurt the animals, but you wouldn't stand up to someone who is hurting them. Like I said, Glinda is wicked, just not wicked enough to be the main villain. I hate to say it, but we all know a Glinda, and we have all at some point in our lives created a Glinda by celebrating their self-serving mediocrity disguised as friendship. Why, you ask? Because there's some part of us like Elphaba. The next wicked character that I want to talk about is Nessa Rose. We are looking at a mountain of slights here. The first scene of Nessa asking Elphaba to not clap back at her bullies for acting weird towards her, for being green, is insane. But it shows us exactly how Nessa feels about Elphaba. Why does she do that? Because it takes the attention off of her on her first day. But let's be honest, the attention came to Nessa right away. The kind where people do the most to accommodate someone with disability, and she is clearly not into that. Which is why Elphaba was there. It was her assigned role to stop that. But Elphaba is green, and she will get looks and comments everywhere she goes. So the logical thing to do would be to not invite Elphaba to your first day of school and do it your own way. Or you accept that she will get negative attention and you try not to be so cruel to her for that. This is a toxic cycle that Elphaba is trapped in, where a person who hates you or thinks less of you keeps you around by being nice to you occasionally, using you for what they can, and punishing you when you try to be your own person. She does not want to get rid of Elphaba, because as long as Elphaba is there, the green one is there, she does not stick out for her disability. Elphaba cannot stand up for herself or make a scene, because that would mean she is her own person. And what would be the point of that? Nessa's spiteful attitude towards Elphaba is very similar to that of her father's, but with one small change. If Nessa was outright cruel and dismissive to Elphaba, she would not be able to keep her around. Elphaba did not come back for her father. She did not care about him. She was not trapped by him. That's not the case with Nessa, because Nessa wants to keep Elphaba around because she's magical and powerful, and whatever happens, she can always conveniently blame Elphaba for it. And if you think about it, that is exactly what happened. When something bad happened to Bach, she was able to blame it on Elphaba. It's not that Nessa Rose doesn't see how badly her dad treated Elphaba her entire life. It's that she doesn't care. She thinks Elphaba should have been treated like that. That is why she didn't come to her rescue and all the kids were making fun of her for that. Because she actually believes that Elphaba should have just stayed in the shadows, not getting attention, and should have just accepted the modicum of kindness that she gives her occasionally, despite being green. Why does she have to be normal? Because if she's normal, I cannot treat her the way that I do. Who needs an enemy when you have sisters like that? Nessa was cherished by her father, and her disability did not register compared to Elphaba's color. She does not have any specific childhood trauma from her caregiver side. So why is she so conscious about her disability to the point where she is pre-triggered by people who are not even trying to discriminate against her? Nissa doesn't care about how others are treated, even though she has lived with a disability. It's not that she is just self-centered, because we already have Glinda. This is control and abuse. She manipulates a man into staying with her. Mind you, the only reason why they went on a date was because of guilt tripping. Falling head over heels for the first guy who asks you out is crazy work. I mean, Bach may have used her as a placeholder, and that's terrible, but then you leave. You don't sign off on laws that make it illegal for him to leave you. Why are you turning on all of Munchkins? This woman is unstable. I'm not surprised that her dynamic with Bach turned abusive, because this is exactly how people who fall in love with you after one conversation behave. What I don't understand is why people are saying that she turned evil. She has been evil this whole time. Her character was so bad that I'm actually surprised she's not the main villain, because in my mind, she's up there with Ramsay Bolton. The last and most horrible woman in Oz is Madame Morrible. There are so many things wrong with this woman, whether it is using Elphaba's talents to further her own plans, or it is aligning herself with a trickster like the wizard. We need to understand that Morrible is not just a difficult person you encounter day to day. She is the system. In that scene where the wizard tells Elphaba that they have to make an enemy out of the animals by taking their ability to speak, that is the whole point. These are the kinds of people you need to be scared of. All the others, such as Glinda or Nessa, they cannot harm people at the extent that they did if you remove people like the wizard and Morrible from the equation. Notice how neither Madame Morrible nor the wizard have any personal reasons to be against the animals. No villain origin stories, everything is fabricated, because that is the whole point. No one is safe around them. They want to maintain control, and they will scapegoat anyone. In this case, it's literally a goat. They were so unhappy with Elphaba until she decided to think for herself and question what was happening to the animals. The system benefits from your talent and hard work, and they will praise you for it until such time as you begin and call things out for what they are. In Elphaba's case, it's rejecting manufactured hate. It's rejecting the notion that animals are second-class citizens when they've lived there their entire life. Yes, there's a lot of similarities between what's happening in Oz and real-world events, but also the propaganda behind it. People like Madame Morrible manufacture racism. She is cooking up segregation and inequalities. No, you did not organically stumble across a stereotype about green people melting away with clean water, and it's not explained by science or supported by research. It's propaganda. Carefully timed and worded fear-mongering about one particular group of people based on their color, intended to do nothing but occupy all the groups of people to consolidate power in one place. Because when you're busy fighting each other over imagined slights, you cannot question the real imbalance of power. You cannot challenge the system when you're fighting each other over race, religion, gender, and whatnot. Madame Morrible is not just a problem. She is the problem. The worst thing about her propaganda is that if there were more green people in Oz, she could have used the exact same template to ice out non-green people. Because it's not about the green people, it's about power. Wicked is a tutorial on how to create an other, or fascism for dummies. This movie proves that it's only possible to discriminate and stereotype a group of people based on color, language, and culture if the general population has low IQ. Of course, you don't like green people. You saw only one in your entire life and had one conversation with them, which included looking them up and down. Of course, if a totalitarian government is broadcasting it, it must be true. Never mind the power of exposing yourself to different cultures, languages, and social settings. Why would I expand my circle when I can just regurgitate the same ideas that my only 3 friends have? Why would I try forming my own? That's silly. Green people are bad. It's common sense. They said it on the radio. Whether it's racism or sexism or any kind of ism, we have come too far to be fighting it based on ethics alone, because that's assuming people have those. You have to fight it by calling it what it is: stupid. The movie does a great job at that. Every time someone sees Alphaba for the first time, she makes it a point to tell them, "No, I'm not seasick. No, I don't eat grass." It's highlighting how little effort it takes to accept stereotypes and how common they are, because people, for the most part, are really stupid. And that's what Metamorable does. She's well aware of how stupid people are, so she uses their lack of information and knowledge to spread propaganda. But it's not just propaganda. It is propaganda to meet her goals, not anyone else's. She does not believe that Alphaba is bad because she's green. She knows exactly why Alphaba is green, and she knows it has nothing to do with her morals. She is trying to use everybody else's stupidity to make them believe Alphaba is bad so she can stop Alphaba from exposing her and the wizards. You might be thinking, well, it wasn't just Morrible. What about the wizard? I would say that if I had to decide who was more evil between Madame Morrible and the wizard, I would say Madame Morrible. The wizard has no power, and he has secret. He needs her more than she needs him. In fact, she could have run this entire thing without him. The reason why she's worse than him is because he is useless, and she's using him for his popularity. In a way, the wizard is Glinda to Madame Morrible's Elphaba, and with him as the figurehead, she can continue to do the actual work behind the scenes. So technically, she is the head of the operation. He is just the face of it. And it's so funny because you actually get to see his giant face